So thank you for coming on, first of all. Today's session is going to be around how to utilise clever quality and how we can use that to effectively kind of beat defects, find issues before they turn into anything more serious, and potentially then what we can do within Business Central and clever quality to cater for those and how we can resolve them. But ultimately as well, how we can make business processes a little bit more efficient and provide a bit more visibility as to what's in there with quality related quality related processes. So today's agenda is just going to be covering the initial main features of clever quality and what's in there. A little bit just in terms of how I believe we differ, how our solution differs to other products that are out there at the moment. I'll be going through most of the session in Business Central, actually going into the app itself in Business Central and how we can actually use some of the processes within BC and how we can actually do kind of real life examples. I'll be covering any kind of extra features that are in there that I potentially won't get a chance to actually demo, but just to showcase what else we have in there. And then we'll do a section at the end just to cover questions, and hopefully I will try and allow you enough time to get plenty in. So, okay, so first things first, what is our clever quality product? Now, I break this down into 5 core pillars really as to how we can utilize it. So first and foremost is quality control. So if anybody's wanting to use some kind of quality product, they want to be able to do quality tests, do quality checks, record results for anything that they're doing as a business, and obviously have visibility of what they've done within there as well. So that's the main part of clever quality. The next step we have in there is how we can actually record any issues that have occurred in the business and log non-conformances. So how we can actually then prevent those issues from reoccurring and also how we can track those issues as well. Then we have this concept of license plating, or we refer to it as containers. So we see it heavily used in the US where you've got, let's say, pallets or totes or containers that are uniquely numbered. And you may have multiple different items in there, but we can then move all of those items around the business in one go, which one is obviously really efficient for users, but two, we can now utilize that with clever quality as well. The next one is vendor compliance. So we are aware that there may be businesses purchasing goods from vendors where those vendors need to have some kind of accreditation or certification. So it could be, I don't know, BRC, ISO, Rainforest Alliance, whatever products they are, but those vendors will need to have certificates. What we don't want to do is effectively have businesses bringing in goods where those certificates have been expired. So we have this, again, risk management part of the process to ensure that we can double check that to see if the certificate's within date and to either warn or prevent where the vendor certificate has been expired. And then finally, shelf life requirements or regulations. So shelf life is a bit of a gap really in Business Central. So we've got a section in there to cater for registering shelf life for sales and purchases, and also just the rules that associate with those as well. And also we've got this concept of, again, warning or preventing goods on receipts or shipments where those dates don't meet the criteria. So clever quality is quite big. There's a lot in there. Obviously, I can only really showcase you some today, but hopefully what I do show you today gives you enough of an idea as to what's involved. But generally speaking, our product is designed to ensure that products and processes are recorded, that issues are never reoccurring, one that we can also then trace what we've done and trace whether things have been passed or failed, but also if we can reduce costs for businesses as well, then it's a big plus. So this is a kind of breakdown as to how I see differences between clever quality and the Microsoft's quality management one that they have at the moment. And this may be a one, as I've mentioned before, that there might be some comments as to any differences in there. This presentation slide, by the way, I'm happy to provide after the fact, so I can put it in the chat if you like just after, so you've got a copy of it. But these, I believe, are the differences between the two that are currently out there at the moment. So what I would say is, from what I've seen, and I've not physically used it, but just from what I've seen of the quality management one with Microsoft at the moment, is that it is more utilized on a pretty simplistic process where we're bringing in goods, sending out goods, doing quality checks. So I believe they can still do quality results. You can do pass or failures. You can record different kinds of triggers and things against those. And obviously you've got things like in there, I think with certificates and C of A, certificate of analysis as well, I believe are in there too. But we have tried to add in quite a lot of extra features that I don't believe are covered. So things I think like more in process kind of production checks, which is one of my demos actually going on. So we'll have a look at those in a minute. We can also incorporate it with things like equipment testing, so doing checks against things like locations or machine centers. And also we've got the compatibility to do that against tools as well with one of our other apps. And just around things like issue handling. So, within businesses, when we're doing quality processes, they're never going to be smooth. It's very rare that everything's going to go through and pass and be perfect. So we do have to provide failure responses or kind of issue handling as to how we can then manage those. And again, some of those are going to be in the demo as we go through. So it's just a bit of a visual tool, but I will put that in the chat afterwards as well, so you've all got a copy. So let's actually get straight into Business Central then, and we'll just cover some of those processes. Now, I'm going to have something covering up my screen. So as I say, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and then we'll come back to them towards the end. So here is my Business Central. The three things that I'm going to show you first of all, before I actually get going into kind of physical processes, is just three core places to put setup. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about them, but these 3 pages are the kind of core areas in our quality module where you need to put data and how we can actually then set up those kind of rules and actually get using it. So one of the first ones I'm going to show is just quality checks. So ultimately, if a business wants to do quality orders and do checks against items or containers or receipts or shipments or anything like that, we need to actually confirm what checks the business is going to be performing. So this is just a flexible, open list that you can create full of all the different types of checks you can do. So some businesses might only do a couple, others may do a long list. That's absolutely fine. But within these checks, we can specify what type of result we're going to be entering. So for example, things like dimension checks where we're doing, height, length and width and all of that. We may just want to let Business Central know we're going to be populating that data with numeric results. So we're going to be putting in information in centimetres and it's going to be numeric data. But for other checks we might do, so I don't know, spot checks or anything, we might just want it to be data that's already got predefined results in there. So actually, we're not expecting the user to be typing in a colour or a yes or something like that. We want to be able to have them select from predefined options. So in that respect, we can just put in some predefined values and then it reduces, again, more errors or more typos when users are actually putting in results for those. And you can see I can do that for multiple different ones as well. What's also really helpful is when we're coming to actually do quality orders, the data that we're actually giving to the users that are performing those checks can sometimes be quite limited because we've only really got a description field here as to what that check entails. So what we can do is we can actually also set some instructions against those checks. So when the user comes to actually do that check, they can open up this screen on the quality order and it just gives them more data as to what they're actually inputting, what they're actually checking for. And you can do that for all the individual checks on here. And obviously you can format it in any which way you like. One of the other things that we found helpful is to be able to also include things like a picture. And we see this a lot in probably manufacturers where they're using things like spec sheets and all of that data is just too much to be putting into a description or instructions field really. So they can attach a picture here. The user can then look at that picture to see what the specs are and therefore use that as a cross check as well when they're doing their check. So it's just a few nice features that we've got in here. A couple of other things we can do, just in case you notice them, is things like destructive tests. So some businesses, I see it probably in kind of pharmaceuticals, maybe even food industries, where if they are checking an item and they're performing a quality check on that product, when they're performing that type of check, those kind of samples might actually be destroyed because of the types of check they're doing. So we can record them as destructive tests and we can then actually scrap them when we're in the quality order to then impact the item ledger entries and therefore change the values there. So it is just then acknowledging that actually the full quantity may not necessarily be the amount that you're then continuing with after that quality order. And then finally, we can do things like subcontractor checks. So there may be the instance where maybe you're in a production order and you've produced a product, and that product then needs to go to an external company who are actually performing the quality check. So we can create a quality order for that. We can do a transfer order directly from the quality order. We can send the goods out to that third party. We can bring the goods back again through that quality order, and then we can input the results for the quality results all in the same place. And it's just that traceability factor of having everything together. So that's the first and foremost thing. We need to define what those checks are going to be. And then we need to actually confirm how we're running those checks. Are we grouping any together, and when do those checks occur? So we've then got this concept of quality tests. So if I just click into any one of these, doesn't really matter. A quality test is now just going to be a group of those checks that you may want to do at a set point in time. So we can assign them out to specific team members if we want to. So let's say you've got, again, just kind of production type checks. You don't want them necessarily going to the goods in department, so you can actually specify the teams or even team members that they're going to. We can group multiple different checks together, or obviously you can just put singular checks, that's also fine. We can define the kind of target result we want. So for example, what result quantifies as a pass when we're actually putting results in for that check. And we can also do things like upper and lower limits. I see it probably more used on things like dates or temperature checks, potentially where something between 5 and 10 degrees is a pass. Anything that falls out of that is a fail. So we've got a couple of different options as to how we can perform those and enter results as well. And just to quickly show, we do also have a couple of different ways we can put results in. So it doesn't just need to be yes and no, pass or fail, or kind of lower and upper limits. We've also got the concept of doing things like calculated values. So I've just got one for area, just as a really simplistic example, but we can say height times width equals value. And it doesn't really matter whether I put 10 or 5 or 5 or 10 in that, as long as the total calculated value meets the expected amount, it is a pass. So we've got calculated ones, and we've also got date related checks that we can perform as well. So that's the concept of having all the checks and then grouping them in tests to confirm that we're doing them together and what results we want to actually post and how many results we want to enter. And then finally, we can just group them in terms of automation, because first and foremost, we want to make sure that the processes are done as quickly as possible and as automated as we can get them. So we can create multiple different automation rules, and these are really just trigger points in Business Central to say, at this point in time, create a quality order for maybe specific filters. So here is a list of the different transaction types that we use as trigger points in Business Central. So we can run them off things like purchase receipts, assembly outputs, production outputs, but also mid-production, so kind of in-process production we can do as well. We've got pre-posting ones, so when we've got warehouse receipts and warehouse shipments before you've actually posted them, we can do quality checks and then post them and potentially do quality checks after that point. And we've also got this concept of container ones, which is license placing, which I'll do an example of as we go further on. But we specify the trigger point in Business Central. We can also use different filters, so whether it's items or vendors or even containers. Obviously, different filters can be applied dependent on what the transaction type is. We confirm what tests we want to do and therefore what checks are going to be performed, whether it's just for the full quantity or sample percentage, and we can specify that. And then just the regularity of how often that quality audit is going to be produced. Is it every single time these criteria is met? Is it for the first 3 potentially? So if you're using new vendors, it's quite helpful. Every third, you can kind of change it as you go. But these are the rules that Business Central is going to be looking at in the background to just do that automation. So let's actually get on with one of the examples, and we're going to do a production order. So I've got a production order here, and I just want to do at the moment an in-process quality order. So I want to just consume some, output some, get a quality order produced for that, so I can then have a look at that quality order, pass or fail it, and then obviously continue with the process. And as I go through, there'll be other kind of things that I can point out and just sort of show you as we kind of go through that process. So I've got my production order here, it's got my items on, and I've got my journal already set up. So my quantity is for 2. As I say, I just want to do a bit of it at the moment. I'm not going to be producing everything. So I'm just going to quickly put in my lots for this. And then we'll just post something. So let me just quickly put this information in. Okay, and I'll put in my tracking reference for this one as well. So I've got my new lot number there. Now, what we can do, I haven't got it set up on this one, but what we can set up is where I've got an example here of a production order where I'm using the same machine center, we've got this concept of link codes, so quality link codes. So actually, as a business, if their production process potentially uses the same machine center or work center more than once, at different points within that production process, we can say, actually, for this one, I want to run a quality order based on a spot check, for example. But then when it hits that machine center again, we can then link it to a different quality check and therefore do, I don't know, temperature gauges or machine checks at that point in time, whatever it may be. So you can actually set up different link codes for different parts of that process to really break that whole production process out, to really make sure we're doing multiple different checks throughout that process, and just to make that process a lot more efficient. So it's already done in the background. We haven't got to have a user constantly kind of thinking about that manually. Okay, so I'll just post that and go and have a look at my quality orders. Now, if I just have a look at my role center for a second, you will notice that we do have a quality tester role center. So this is really helpful. I'll keep referring back to this just because everything that you need is in here really. But all of the quality orders that you've got in there are here. If you're part of a team, obviously you can see your own specific teams or just your specific quality orders. All the tests that are open or potentially even just kind of on hold. Anything to do with all the other processes that we're going to be looking at as we go. And it's just a really nice place to keep coming back and just referring to what's in there. So, okay, so we've got this new quality order that's been generated. You see I've got it for this specific machine center. So let's just open that up and have a look. So every time we do a quality order using this automation, it's going to be linking it to that document that it was created from, which is just a source document. So we'll always be able to trace that. And again, in terms of traceability, that's what we need when we're doing quality processes. So we've got the production order reference, we know it was for a machine center, we know what item it was against, and it's just against the one that I physically outputted. So I can see my results down here, and I can populate those kind of as I see. So if I just put in any value for now, it doesn't really matter at the moment. So I've got my result here. It's recording me, so it's recording physically who's actually doing that. So again, we've got that traceability factor. I can add in any additional comments if I want to, so the user's always got that option to do that. And there is also a bit of integration here as well with some of our other apps, so things like clever document links to do things like pictures and or linking any of the documents. So as I'm putting in results, you'll see that it's changing whether it's going to be a fail or a pass. The value I've just entered here didn't meet the pass criteria, which is obviously why it's failing. And I could just continue to put in values. And obviously it's just going to be updating the overall result, whether it's changing it or not. Okay, so ultimately this is still a fail. Now I mentioned earlier, we've got this concept of issue handling. And as I say, not everything's going to go through as you'd expect it. It's not always going to pass. So there's quite a few options we can do in terms of how we rectify that. What can we do as a business to kind of move forwards? So depending on what type of quality order, where it was produced, we've got different options we can do. I can kind of just show a few that we can do in here, but we can do things like retests. So if we're ever doing a quality order for a small percentage of the amount, we can then actually do a retest if it fails, and it will just pull in another quality order for the full value. We can create a non-conformance and therefore log an issue. So I'm going to do that in a second. We can block the source document. We can do splits of lots or containers, which I will do some examples further down the line. registering scrap, so we can set up a scrap item and therefore scrap either the failed quantity or full quantities. We can do reworks, which I will do later, especially on things like purchase receipts. We can do purchase returns and just get Business Central to create that document for you automatically and post that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we can do transfers as well. So there's a whole lot of different options we can do from the quality orders directly. Now, this is an issue, it's failed. I can technically just post this as a fail, but equally, I also want to just log this as a non-conformance as well. And this concept of non-conformance is what businesses are going to be using to record any problems that occurred, what they kind of did short term to fix it, but then equally what they're going to do long term to fix it, because it is always about this issue prevention. Businesses should never be seeing the same problems reoccurring because it's just ineffective and it's costly. So we don't want to do that. So we can just put in a brief description for this non-conformance. We can assign this to users as well, and this is really helpful because we can actually get Business Central user tasks connected to this. Then it just defines where those tasks are going. And then we can use things like source codes, category codes, and subcategory codes for a couple of reasons. One, reporting. The more data we put in, the more we can report out. But two, this information is using task templates in the background, so we can then actually get tasks created, and only when those tasks are actually then resolved in Business Central can we then close this non-conformance. So it's all around making sure that those tasks are actually the things that are going to be fixing this problem long term. So if I just put in production source code, I'll just use incorrect IMS, doesn't really matter too much. Okay, and then I'll use those as well. Now, because this non-conformance has been created from that quality order, which has been created from that production order, it knows all of that data, okay? So from a user's perspective, they're not having to populate what does it relate to, what production order was it for, it's linking everything, and it's also linking it back to the quality order as well. And as you'll see, it's bringing across the items in here as well. So I can change them if I want. Now, with non-conformances, you want to specify what happened. So that would be the initial record, and all of this is just what users can look back on in the future, see what actually got recorded. What are they now going to do to fix it currently, so they can just move past this and get it processed. So they'll populate that with more information. And then finally, what is the long-term resolution here? What are they actually going to be doing? What things have they put into practice? Anything that they've put in here to change it. And then we can just change the status. It's now in progress. And it's telling me that I've got some user tasks that have now been created based on that data I've put in. So my tasks for this user is to inform the production manager of the issue and then push the quality order through rework. So it just gives the user all of that information to, just carry on with that process really. And if I actually go to my role center again, you'll see that it is now actually pending as my user tasks. And as I said, I can't close that non-conformance down until I've actually done those resolutions. So that non-conformance just mentioned, it wanted me to do a rework. Now we classify a rework for Clever Quality as a means of pushing a failed quality order through either a production order or an assembly order and effectively fixing that product. So it could be, just fixing the packaging, it could be recutting something, whatever it may be as a business, it gives them that option. So within your quality order, we can create a rework, and that will just go off, create me the production order in this example, and then just allow me to redo that process again. And actually, I can then set up another quality order on the output of that to then hopefully pass that order as well. So it can just be a continuous stream of process, quality order, another process to fix it, potentially another quality order until everything has gone through smooth. So it really is capturing any issues, giving that control to fix it to the users, and then recording the fixes further down the line as well. So hopefully that just gives you a bit of an idea as to how we can use the in-process one, at least for production orders, with quality orders to kind of showcase that process, and then how we potentially may fix that with a rework. So another example I'm going to show is just this concept of license plating, which is what we refer to as containers. Now, container in our respect is basically or anything you want it to be, really. So we've just got examples of things like pallets or totes. It could be a physical container. It could be anything you like, really. It's whatever businesses are using. And these containers may be something that is reusable. So it's always the same pallet going around the business. It's got a unique identifier to it, but we're constantly reusing that. Or it could just be a new pallet. It's got a reference. It's going out. It's never coming back. We then get a new pallet with a new reference, and that goes out the door. So it's, again, up to businesses how they want to utilize them. But the first and foremost thing we just need to do is just create what those container types are going to be in the business. Now, containers, as you're seeing it currently, is effectively its own app. So actually you can just purchase it completely separately. But when you do have Clever Quality installed, you do get this as a dependency app. So it is all involved and included. So just so you kind of know the difference really between the two. And if I just have a quick look at some containers that I've got in the background already, I have a couple of totes, but most of mine are pallets. And you'll see this is the unique reference that we're always using to then track what that container is, what it contains, and what the status of that container is. Now, I mentioned that it's its own app, but obviously we do use it with Clever Quality, and that's because we've got businesses that want to do quality orders or quality checks with those containers. So most of the processes for Clever Quality will utilize things like lot tracking, so lots or serials, and we'll rely on those. But actually, we've also got businesses that don't necessarily use lots and serials, and therefore we can actually use containers as an additional method. So we can group products into it. We've got that container record number against it, and then we can actually do quality orders based on that container itself. So we can do two things with them. We can either do quality orders based on the contents. So if I just open this palette as an example, you'll see it's got two different item numbers on there, different quantities, and I've got quality orders that have actually been done for one of them. So it's tracking all of that in here. And I can actually also see those container entries as well with different lot numbers, which is quite nice for visibility. But I can also do a check on the physical container itself. Again, really useful if you're using things like totes or you're using pallets. They're going out to customers potentially. You want to bring them back, but then you want to do quality checks on them to make sure that they're still usable, they're not damaged or anything like that. So we've got both container statuses in terms of quality and contents. So that's a really useful tool. So I'm just going to quickly go into a purchase order. And I'm just going to quickly receive something just so we can actually use that process and see how we're actually utilizing containers. And I think I've got this item, which is container tracked. Okay, there we go. So I can release that, go to my receipt, and you'll see here now I've got container types. So I can actually just populate what container I now want to bring in those goods and where I'm placing it. So with this container concept, we can use this pretty much throughout the process. We've got it inbuilt in a lot of the different areas within BC. We've got it in journals, we've got it in receipts and shipments and putaways and picks and everything. So it is heavily used. And we can also use them in production processes as well. So I'm just going to bring them into a container I've already got, but you could put it into a brand new one. And I can then just post that. Lot number, sorry. As I did mention earlier, you can use this without lot numbers. It isn't a requirement. It's just my setup. So, okay. So what this will now do is not only will it actually create me a quality order for the purchase receipt because I've got that automated and switched on, but it is now going to be associating that container with the goods that I've just put in there. So if I just go back to that container, you'll see I've now got more quantity for the item and it's recording that lot that's in there. So again, it's just this traceability of receiving in goods and it going into that container, and I can see the different lots, the different quality statuses, and I can do quality orders against it as well. Now with your quality orders, you can do them automatically. You have got automation rules for them as well. But as with pretty much any part of Business Central where quality is hitting, you can also do manual quality orders too. So I can say, create me a quality order for the contents or create me a quality order for the container itself. And it'll go off and it'll do that and just ask me to how do I want to do that basically? So I can just do this little wizard, confirm what items I want it to be including, what test, therefore what checks I want to do, and done. So it goes off and creates those quality orders for me. Now, one of the things that we've noticed, which we get businesses asking about a lot, is what if there's actually an issue? You know, we're bringing in goods, we're producing products, they may have lot numbers or they're actually in containers, but some of them have actually got issues and some of them don't. How do we process that? Because if we just put them as a fail, everything fails. Or if we put them as a pass, everything passes. And in the real world, that isn't really possible. So what we can do is we can do things like quality orders where there may be mixed containers, and we can utilize this concept of split containers or even split lots if we've got multi-lots in there. And what that will actually enable us to do is it will allow us to part pass or part fail quantities within that container or lots and allow us to break it down. And it's really useful for especially lots where we've got things like blocking functionality on there. So if something fails, we can actually block that lot. We don't necessarily want to block the whole lot because actually some of it might be okay. So we can use this concept of sublotting, which is this split lot concept, to then really break that product down and allow us to actually branch it out. So we've got some that have passed and some that have failed. And actually, if I go to my lot numbers a second, we should have some examples in here as to how that's been done. Let's see if I've got some here. Yeah. So I've got this concept here of my original lot number, which is the 0190. I created a sublot for it. Sorry. My sublot lot number then is just -1. I can change that and I can customize that reference as well. But I've got that traceability of what was the original one and what was the status, what's the new sublot that's been created from that, and what's the status for that one. And it's also got that traceability between the two. So it's confirming the original lot number and how many sublots are existing for that lot number as well. So it's just a really nice way of being able to branch those out, adds a bit more flexibility to the process, but also then allows us to use those containers, move multi-goods around the process at the same time, and potentially even break those out and do quality checks on them as well. So I'm conscious of time, and I'm also conscious there's quite a lot of other things I wanted to pick out and at least identify for you. So I'm going to move on, if that's okay, and just talk about those quality link codes that I mentioned earlier. So this is really useful, as I say, where we've got production orders and users are potentially using the same machine centers or work centers to do different processes, and they want to perform different quality orders at those points in time. So on the routing, we have this quality link code concept. If I just expand that out, and we can now actually just define this code that I can then set up an automation rule and just get generated a quality order as and when that gets hit. So you'll see I've got link 1, which is just my example for the quality link code set up for that machine center. But then when I use it again on the same production order, I'm going to be linking it to a different link code, which is then looking at different quality checks and therefore allowing me to do different checks throughout the same production order process. So it's a really, really handy tool. And as I say, we've tried to make this applicable for more complex usage and to really just allow businesses that kind of extra flexibility, really. I'm going to touch on vendor compliance a little bit, but I'm not going to go too much into detail with it. But this vendor compliance is just this concept of how can we make sure goods aren't coming through the door where the vendor certificate has expired. So what we can just do is we'll set up the vendor compliance documents that we're expecting businesses to be using. Let's move that out of the way. So we've got the example of the certificates here. We've got the example of what vendor we're expecting to have that certificate. And then we can link things like, is there a certificate reference on there? When did we request it? But also, what is that expiry date on that cert? So here, you know, red is bad, red's expired. So we can see that both of mine are expired. That can now look at either the expected receipt date or the work date when I'm actually posting or releasing that purchase order. And it can either prevent or it can just warn where that certificate has expired. So again, we can make it a hard and fast rule, but also we can just make it a warning because some customers don't particularly want it to be hard and fast. They just want that notification. But it is in there again as another way that we can kind of check where something isn't going to meet the criteria and do something about it. So it's just that extra step that we can have. By default, this is always switched off, but it is just literally a toggle that you can switch on to then just get checks done every time you're releasing purchase orders. So really, really simple setup for that one. We've also got things like tracking and how we can then potentially block, which I also believe is in other examples for quality. But obviously ours has also got things like the container stuff in there as well. So when we are producing quality orders, we can define what status that quality order sits. So for example, we're receiving in goods. Do we want that to be actually always blocking a lot or always blocking that container? Or do we just want that to allow us to actually do movements and allow us to, do putaways and put it on sales orders without there being any issues, even if it fails, So we can actually really knuckle down into what the statuses are in terms of that quality order. But then what do we do in that instance? So all of my quality orders that I'm working on are in process in my setup. I don't really have any blocking features on for that point, but obviously you can put them on. But then if something fails in my examples, I want to block everything. I don't want to be able to do anything with that lot number or serial number, even package or container if it's failed. I don't want that movement. And again, you've just got that flexibility to do so. So you can just come in here and you can change the setup as you see fit. And we have also tried to change that in terms of being a little bit more flexible. So it's not just a case of a hard block. We could block it for sales or purchases or services or production. So yeah, we've tried to kind of put in as much flexibility there and control as to what can actually happen with those goods when they're actually posting quality orders or even when they just exist on quality orders as well. And then finally, I just wanted to confirm about this equipment testing thing I mentioned earlier. So there are businesses, and we actually put this in based on some requests from customers where they wanted to do checks, whether it be every hour or at the end of every day, and they just wanted it to be this automatic process. So we thought, okay, how can we best put in this concept? So we have this concept of timed quality orders. And the timed quality orders can be based on fixed assets, machine centres, it can be locations, work centres. So you've got quite a lot of flexibility there as to how you want to do it. And as I mentioned, if you do have, I think it's Clever MES or Clever Manufacturing Plus, we can also use it against physical tools as well. But you can just record them as fixed assets in the interim. But this is just a quality order I did, which was just a timed one. It was against a specific fixed asset. And as I say, you just use the job queue to then define how regular you want that quality order to be produced. You've also got your checks in there, which come out automatically. So all you then need to do is actually put your results in. And it is just about that efficiency process, making sure that a quality order is being produced as and when you need one against the specific machine centre or work centre or fixed asset or location that you need to do a check against and record them as well. And obviously all of these quality orders are posted. You can then check the posted ones to see what was actually recorded. And you've also got that data to refer back to at a future point in time as well. So how can we make sure that businesses, when they're using Clever Quality, are kind of confident in the data? How can we then use that data that gets put in, and how can we find it really? So we had this question come up a lot, again from just kind of future demos or past demos that we've had, and they said, it's great putting in all this information, but if we can't use it, what's the point of it? Which makes perfect sense. So against things like vendors, customers, item cards, stock keeping units as well, I think, we've also got this concept of statistics. We want to be able to look at that data and actually analyse what we've posted. How can we assess that information? Can we maybe identify patterns where we've posted things and it might make us question as a business, does the check need to change? Is it an issue with that vendor? It just identifies patterns. So we can have a look at statistics, potentially by item or by period. We can put in filters, so like locations, for example, or even just start dates. And we can then just have a look to see what's actually been posted against this vendor, these items, and even go and have a look at the quality orders that relate to that as well. But I think the really good information here that you can pull out is, as I say, this information kind of patterns. So what was tested, how many's passed, how many's failed. We've done concessions, which is kind of like an overrider as well. Did we rework any? And if so, how many? Did we scrap any? Did we return any? What's the pass rate? So it's giving the data to users, but in a really easy to understand way. And I do find the issue with Business Central sometimes is that it contains all of this information, but it isn't really that easy to find or pull out, and you have to create your own reports to get it. So we have tried to make it as really easy and obvious for users as physically possible. Another thing we have in here is just item tracing. So obviously that's standard, but again, businesses that are using Clever Quality or any kind of quality product really wants to know what's actually been processed, and how that impacts quality orders, or has quality orders been done against it. So when I am looking at things like lot numbers here, I can also see that history of, has it been done on a quality order? What's the quality order reference, and what was the result for that quality order as well? So just on a really, really easy, simple basis, how can I trace that lot? What happened with it? Did it pass? Did it fail? What's the quality order reference? And I can go off and find that information really easily now. In terms of that as well, because again, just kind of thinking about things that are requested or information that we know gets asked about a lot, is again that same concept. How can we actually find what was posted without having to hunt around for it? How can we, actually go and have a look at what information was done for quality orders? So we've put this on the lot numbers and serial numbers as well, where we can actually see all the quality orders, or these are posted quality orders that exist for the lots and serials, but also what physical results were entered for them. So again, we're not having to find the quality order number, go off and find that posted quality order, then look at it. We're trying to give that information in a really simple way, directly from where they're probably going to be looking for it, and we can see that nice and quickly as well. And then the final thing I wanted to mention was just in terms of things like quality certificates. So again, how can we make, businesses feel comfortable that we're actually doing these quality orders and we've actually posted this information and recording it nicely? Well, when we're actually posting quality orders, we can print certificates for them as well, just to confirm what was being tested. I should expand that out, sorry, it's a bit small. What's been tested, what lots, if they relate to any lots, what container numbers were they sent on, what was the physical results entered, and did they pass or fail? And we can actually also add user signatures on here as well if you want that as an extra feature or not. So this is just something really, really nice to be able to send to that customer to say, look, the checks have been done, this is the results, this is the data, and it gives them a bit of peace of mind. The final things I was going to mention before we jump onto the final bit, just to allow for questions, was a couple of the extra bits that we've put in that I haven't necessarily demoed but are in here. So some really nice features actually around items and item tracking. If we just find any item, really doesn't matter. And have a look at the tracking codes for these. I think it's in my... Which one is it in? Might be that one. Sorry. Okay, so I've got a couple of options in here now. I can do a lot number format. So I've actually got this concept of this lot number builder. So I can actually say, right, create me a lot number based on some data. So I can date it based on things like year, 4 digits, month, week numbers, item numbers, document numbers, and I could just start to build this lot number together. And it just gives, again, that flexibility to customers to how do you actually want that lot number to be defined? How would you actually want to build that number out? And we can really branch it out. So it doesn't just need to be one thing, it can be something else. And we can keep adding to that and effectively just building that lot number creation, which is just a really nice extra feature to have. And again, we had this request from users where they wanted to print labels out before they do production orders really. So actually pre-create labels before they do outputs. So they've got the labels to actually put onto the goods. They can scan them. They've got the lot numbers on there already, rather than waiting for them to be outputted. So we can now actually also pre-allocate lot numbers on production orders as well. Just a nice extra feature that is in there. As I mentioned, we can do subcontracting, so that's just external testing. So from quality orders, we can just push them through transfer orders. We can also send certificates out to the subcontractor so they can see what they're actually checking for, receive the goods back through the quality order so it's all being traced, and enter results. So we're still entering the results for that, but we've got the results back from the subcontractor. And you'll actually see if I find one for an item. Let me just quickly find one that's got an item in it. I think that has. We've got this quantity of subcontractors as well. So we've actually also always got that visibility of it's at the subcontractor, they're still doing their part. We need to bring it back, it's back with us. So we've always got that data. And that pretty much covers, not everything, because there's loads in here. But other than things like shelf life and other little bits that are in here, it covers a lot as to what we've tried to put in here. It's one of them where it's a big app. There's a lot of flexibility. Businesses are going to use it in their own ways. So we have to try and cater for different industries and different methods. But fundamentally, we have to also make it as easy and as simple to use as possible, whilst automating as much as we can, but then just giving them that data once they've posted everything to just make better business decisions, see patterns where things have actually occurred, prevent issues from ever reoccurring on non-conformances, and making sure they're actually completing those tasks before they're posting them. And yeah, that is pretty much covering everything that I'd planned to kind of mention. So if I just go back to my presentation slide a second, just a couple of things I wanted to really mention really before I come back and close it off to questions. So is it extensible? Yes. We provide the source code for you, so it isn't something that we hide. It's fully available, and if you need any sort of support with that, it's there. One, is it also supported as well? Yes. If you aren't using any of the Clever products, then we have a dedicated support team. They know our Clever products inside out, and it goes to them. That's where it gets handled. And ultimately, if any issues are recorded, it comes back to us and we see those. There are training materials provided, so we do have a dedicated document site with everything recorded. That is always being updated. It is a constant bane of my life, in all honesty, but it is in there. It's always been updated. And we've also got a YouTube site as well with videos. Again, they're always being updated. We've got new ones going in currently, and where we can put any specific ones in for specific different kind of bits of functionality, we'll always put them in as well. And then what's next? So what are we actually planning on putting in the next releases? We have just done this release this month, so we aren't going to be doing one this month, probably not even next month. But the next stuff that is going in is going to be compatibility around handhelds and how we can actually use handhelds to record data, to enter results for quality orders, and then post quality orders on those handhelds as well. So there is a lot of other things that we've got planned for Clever Quality, but I'd say that's probably the biggest thing that's coming up that we know is going to be out in the next release. And I've actually cut myself quite short there, so that's actually giving you a good 10 minutes or so to go over any questions. So hopefully that gave you an idea as to what Clever Quality is capable of. But please, if you do have any questions now, ask away.
I got one, but let me
Sure.
just. So I have a customer that actually sends out some of the analysis to an external lab.
Yes.
And so they will. I don't remember what they're actually looking for, but sometimes the detection level is from the external lab. They cannot detect the specific amount because it's below some sort of a detection level.
Okay.
So they will never get a real result back. They will just get the result back that it's below detection level.
Yeah.
So can you enter results that are not an actual result, but just a below detection level result?
Okay. So we've got two things that come to mind with that. One, could you potentially use a lower limit or upper limit and then actually use those limits to confirm whether something passes or fails? So even if it doesn't meet the limit, it could still potentially be acceptable. Or two, we've got results that you can enter that aren't necessarily impacting the overall result. So they're just kind of for your information results, really. So yes, we can put them on quality orders to say we just want to record the result, but we don't want that result to actually impact the overall pass or fail of it. So it is just there as like an optional data that can be populated. So I'd say you've got those two options in that example.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions?
I don't have.
Okay.
Looks
It
like
looks
a very,
good.
very good app.
Good. Thank you. Was there anything that surprised you by any chance?
Anything that I don't know. It's just it covers like the routing link and all that. That
Yeah.
was quite advanced. So yeah.
It's what I would say is, as you probably are aware yourself, apps are going to be updated on a always regular basis. They're never just this stagnant product. It's never going to always remain the same. But
Right.
what we are good at, what I would say is we have a lot of partners, we have a lot of customers. Obviously, we've got the developers themselves that are always coming up with what's next, what would be the next thing to include, what are people shouting about that actually makes sense, what are Microsoft bringing out that actually we should be catering for and thinking about in advance. It's never just going to remain the same. So what I would say is whenever we do get suggestions for this would be really good, or it fits 90% of what we're looking for, but I just wish it did this one thing, we'll raise it. If it doesn't get added in if people don't raise them, but if they do get raised, then chances are it gets reviewed on a monthly basis, and that's where most of our new features come from. So we do always try and stick with what we know is coming up, but equally Clever Quality is one of our bigger apps. There's a lot of items already in the review analysis for what's going to go in it next. It's just trying to condense them and not make the new releases too big, but equally make them big enough so that they include good enough features. So, but no, I'm glad you liked it. So thank you. Any further
Welcome.
questions?
Good.
No? Okay. That's great. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope it gave you a good insight into what's included, and enjoy the rest of your day.